On the 7th of February, 1995, Ramzi Youssef was arrested by Pakistani officials and handed over to U.S. diplomatic agents, who then flew him to the United States, eventually to Manhattan Island, where he was imprisoned. When the plane landed, an FBI agent pointed at the Twin Towers and said, "They're still standing," to which he replied, "They wouldn't be if I had enough money and explosives." Ironically, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Youssef's uncle, was actually in the next room sleeping as Ramzi was arrested. But I suppose if you've caught one, you've caught them all. He was red-handed after all. Youssef's uncle would later become a household name as the supposed mastermind behind 9/11. Why have we forgotten Youssef? Well, look at him. Not one of the bright and beautiful. Not to mention the chemical burns all over his hands from bomb making, of course. Little do you know, however, that Youssef is indeed immortalized as one of the most ambitious and, albeit indirectly, successful terrorists of all time. How so? I recalled his dopey face the other night as I heard about the terrorist plot to blow up planes over the mid-Atlantic. As the press have put it, we have something new to fear: chemical bombs, made from ordinary household items to be mixed mid-flight and detonated. It's all the rage now. No more lotion, hairspray, wine, nothing. As the international community frantically tries to prevent such a calamity, we are told that the information was intercepted in communications that the U.S. and British governments before 9/11 had not the power nor legal right to intercept. Thank God for the Patriot Act, right? Well, what about Youssef? Youssef dreamed up something called Operation Bojinka. Phase 1. Kill the Pope during his visit to World Youth Day in the Philippines. A terrorist would dress as a priest, maneuver close to the Pope's posse, and as the pontiff approached, detonate a bomb. Phase 2. Boarding 11 U.S.-bound airlines with the chemical makings of bombs, mixing them mid-flight, setting a timer, and deboarding the plane during a stopover. The process would be repeated on the way back home, as they would board outbound flights with the U.S. as the eventual destination. In other words, a rinse and repeat wash cycle. All terrorists would escape to Pakistan unharmed. Phase 3. Hijacking airplanes and crashing them into the Pentagon, the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, and with enough manpower, the World Trade Center in New York City. Now, after his arrest, this might have gone down as just another terrorist dreaming big and not really doing much about it. Until you discover that on the 26th of February, 1993, Youssef rented a Ryder van, loaded it with explosives, and drove it into the basement of the World Trade Center, where it was detonated. And in 1994, Ramzi constructed a similar bomb and drove it towards the Israeli embassy in Bangkok. However, he collided with a motorcyclist, prompting him to flee the scene immediately. In December 1994, he boarded Philippine Airlines Flight 434 in Manila. He made his way to the bathroom and took the batteries out of his shoes. He then assembled the bomb and tucked it into the life vest under his seat. He got off the plane in Cebu, a stopover before the plane went to Tokyo, Japan. Haruki Ikegami, a 24-year-old businessman, took Youssef's old seat. 2 hours later, the device exploded, mutilating Ikegami and nearly tearing him in two. The blast blew a hole in the floor and severed the cables that controlled the plane's flaps. The jet steering was crippled, but the captain made an emergency landing in southern Japan, saving 272 passengers and 20 crew. Youssef monitored the effects of his test, then increased the amount of explosive in his devices and began preparing at least a dozen bombs. So he wasn't just talking shit after all. A pretty impressive resume for a terrorist to have. So in 1995, we have in custody a man who has already bombed the World Trade Center. Details about all 3 phases of Bojinka on his laptop computer, and information from a Muslim informant who was paid $2 million to turn on Youssef, who I'm sure invested it wisely, and one ugly dude whose uncle was definitely close to Osama bin Laden. Yet in 1995, you could still wear your shoes while walking through airport security. I can almost picture this guy standing in his concrete cell at the Supermax Detention Center in Colorado, wagging his chemically burned finger at Mohammed Atta for not hitting the CIA headquarters on 9/11, while the hijackers were up there and all. I wouldn't be surprised if he sent a thank you note to the U.S. government for keeping all of his plots a secret. so that they could be carried out in relative peace. Of course, 9/11 would see only a little less mayhem than the original plot, which the U.S. authorities had reviewed in detail back in 1995. This time, however, the towers did come down. So when I heard about this new plot, I laughed. I suppose right along with Yusuf. At all the people dropping expensive wine and perfume in the trash at the security gate. I stopped waving my arms in the air frantically years ago. It is obvious that we've known since that fateful day in the Philippines that this would happen. But why did it take 11 years for the government to say anything about it? In fact, what is alarming to me isn't the plot, its details, or even that we knew since 1995 that it would happen, although this is very alarming within itself. What is extra alarming is that after 9/11, when every time I went through security and took off my shoes and watched them swab my laptop for traces of nitroglycerin, that I could hold a drink in my hand and they wouldn't ask what was in the bottle.